Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar. We're delighted. Welcome to our live stream. This is our very first live stream. We're delighted you're able to join us today. We are having a little bit of issue on Facebook, so I'm just going to try to fix that really quick. But if you guys just want to let us know if you're able to hear me on our other platforms, that would be including YouTube as well as Instagram, that would be great. And I'm just going to see if we may be able to add this back onto Facebook, because there's always something with technology, right? So hang on 1 second for me. Do, 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 do. All right, we're going to see if that works. Maybe now we're being live on Facebook as well. Hopefully it's behaving itself. So again, thank you all so very much for joining us for our very first live stream for Pet Dog U. We're delighted you're able to join us today. In this very first live stream, we're going to be talking about a pretty important topic, and that's all about allowing our dog to say no, which may seem as though that's a little blasphemous. Isn't my dog just supposed to do what I tell them to do? But we're actually going to be talking about how it can be very powerful to allow our dogs to have choice, to ensure that they're able to participate and be able to be more making a choice of what it is that they want to do with us, that there's more of a give and take between us and our dogs. We're also going to talk about a couple of pitfalls that we may fall into when we are working with or training our dogs. So if you guys can just do a quick favor for me, if you would be able to just let me know in the comments whether or not you can hear me, if everything's working on your end, that would be great. I just want to make certain that technology is indeed behaving itself. But again, my name is Diana Santos. I am the owner and lead instructor for Pet Dog U. And again, we are very delighted to be hosting these live streams. We're going to be doing these at least once a month, talking about a variety of different topics. And we're also going to be bringing in our fellow instructors to talk about other things as well. And we also want to make certain we're talking about what you guys are interested in. So if there's something in particular about dog training, puppy training, maybe dog sport training that you're interested in, please let me know. And then let me make certain that we get those live streams scheduled for you. This is currently being live streamed on our Pet Dog U Facebook page, on our Instagram page, as well as our YouTube channel for Pet Dog U. And the nice thing is that this will all be recorded and then automatically posted to those locations. And I'm also going to be manually adding it to the Friends of Pet Dog U Facebook group. So if you aren't already a part of that group, I definitely encourage you to do so. It's a really nice little community we're building over there. So if you're interested in dog training, it's a good place to come over and say hi. So again, we are going to be here for about an hour or so. And again, this is supposed to be a really relaxed kind of conversation. We can all talk about this really interesting topic as far as allowing our dogs to say no. So again, if you guys want to write any comments that you have, even if it's just like, hi, I can hear you, or where you're from, that'd be great. I can see all the comments on my end, and I do want this to be participatory as much as possible, so that, again, we're able to have a little bit of a back and forth. So this idea that, oh yeah, you should allow your dog to say no. You're saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. My dog should only be saying yes. I ask my dog to do something, and then they should do it. And I think that that's a reasonable thing for us to think, right? But then we just want to break this down a little bit. When you probably brought your dog into your home, maybe you were even thinking about getting a dog to begin with. I'm going to assume that you weren't thinking about butting heads with a furry alien all day long. You weren't thinking, I'm just going to be mad and frustrated day in and day out and just question all of my choices. You probably instead had some other things in mind. Maybe you were envisioning playing ball or having your dog, go on walks or hikes with you. Maybe do little day trips. Maybe even like hang out with you at a dog-friendly cafe. Maybe go visit family or friends. You probably had a pretty nice idea in the back of your mind as far as what it is you wanted to do with your dog, the kind of relationship that you wanted to have with them. I think it's important to keep that in mind, that you're bringing in a very smart, intelligent, problem-solving, inquisitive, opinionated, little thinking being into your home. And the more that we be able to focus on the relationship so that we're basically reducing conflict, the better that it could possibly be. So we basically want to make certain that we're framing things in a way that we actually enjoy spending time with our dogs. Again, every single dog requires us to take care of them as far as providing food and shelter and engagement. There's time and money involved, right? And the last thing we want to do is bring a dog into our lives and then just be like, oh, this was such a bad decision. So we want to think of ways that we may be able to reframe how we think about things so there's not that much conflict. Additionally, because our dogs are these thinking and feeling, emotional, opinionated, furry little beings, they actually want to be able to trust in us. They want to be successful. They want to ensure that everything makes sense on their end so that they can be successful to live with the big, weird, two-legged thing. So, with that in mind, we should be doing all that we can to try to listen to what they are saying and then also to support them if they are talking to us. Maybe our dog is nervous about something. Maybe they're uncertain about something. Maybe they're just downright scared about something. It would be so much more of a better approach for us to be supportive in that situation than to just simply discount it and to say, oh, no big deal. You just have to deal with it, dog. We instead want to be able to listen to them when they're telling us these things so that we would be able to give them the support that they need. And lastly, again, this whole idea of avoiding conflict with the dog. And what I mean by this is that even if you're thinking from a training perspective, as far as what it is we may want the dog to do in any given moment, we want to make certain that we are trying to avoid conflict in that situation. What we may think of is what we're wanting the dog to do makes perfect sense to us, right? We're like, yes, this makes perfect sense. I want you to do X, Y, or Z. But then it turns out that it's actually not so clear to the dog. Maybe they are perceiving it completely differently, or maybe they're just unable to do the task that we're asking. And it would be almost unfair for us to ask them to do that task. With that in mind, having our dogs have the opportunity and the ability to say no, and that we would then be able to understand that, internalize it, and then use it to our advantage to improve the relationship, to make certain that we're able to navigate our dog through their lives in a way that could be most successful, and that we would be able to frame our training in a way that would be with basically better results. That's why saying this whole idea of allowing the dog to say no is actually a really important thing that we should probably incorporate not only in training, but in our everyday lives as well. So I just want to make certain that everything is behaving itself. So I'm just going to check some things on the back end to see whether or not this is actually working. So bear with me for just a moment. Okay, I can see that this is working. Fantastic. Wonderful. We always want to make certain that technology is behaving. So I want to give you guys a couple of examples to try to help this make a little bit more sense. So let's say that you've decided for your living situation, you've set up certain rules as far as how it is that you're going to be living with your dog. And one of those rules is that there aren't supposed to be any dogs allowed up on the furniture, right? Maybe there's someone in your household that has allergies. And they're like, you know what? I need to have a space in this house that I'm not absolutely miserable. So we're not going to allow the dogs up on the furniture. Not a problem. You do your training. The dogs completely understand it. It's not an issue. There's plenty of dog beds all over the place. It's completely fine, right? Not a problem. But then you decide that you actually would like to maybe start doing some trick training with your dog because that sounds like a lot of fun. So you hear about these things called climbs, these little tables like what you see pictured here. And there's a whole bunch of different tricks you may be able to train with a climb. So you go out and you purchase the climb and you're like so excited. You're like, great, we're going to do all these different tricks and training using this climb. It's going to be so much fun. All right, dog, I want you to climb up on this. But then the dog says, that's a trick question, right? Because the last time I checked, that's furniture. And you are very frustrated, right? Because you want them to come up on this thing. You're doing everything in your power. And your dog is looking at you like, no, I'm not supposed to go up on that. You've told me in no uncertain terms that I'm not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to stay off of furniture. This is where your dog is saying no, because as far as they understand, the rules that they live by 24/7 dictate I don't put my feet up onto things such as this table thing. This is a piece of furniture. I'm not supposed to put my feet up on this. So I hope that this makes sense how it's really easy for us to hit into these conflict points. And if we allow our dogs the opportunity to say no, and we don't get, immediately thinking of the dog is being insolent, the dog is being stubborn, the dog is being enter in bad word. Instead, if we're able to see it from the dog is telling me that in their 24/7 life, the rules I've laid out for them to be successful means they need to do X. But now, this very specific situation is telling them to completely do something opposite. There's confusion, basically. So I hope that makes sense that this happens quite a bit, particularly when we're talking about training and especially in the dog sport world. So if you don't know, I am very passionate about scent work. If you don't know what scent work is where the dog is actually trained and tasked to find individual odors so that we have trained the dog that we want them to find. So typically in the United States, that means the dogs are finding things like birch, anise, or clove. And those odors are hidden within different areas. So it could be somewhere within a room, somewhere outside, somewhere on a vehicle, or maybe inside of a container like a box. And as you are going along in your scent work training journey, the hides start getting more complicated. And one of the ways that they can start getting a little bit more complicated is we start elevating them, meaning the thing that we want the dog to find is now off of the ground. And the more that you train, the higher those can get. And one of the most common things that we see as instructors is that handlers who are working in scent work expect the dog to seek height. And what I mean by that is if I had a hide on a wall, let's say, I'm expecting 9 times out of 10, what people do is they expect the dog to put their paws up on the wall in order to get as close to that hide as possible. But in this situation, most dogs are trained to keep all 4 feet on the ground. So you actually have the dog in a conflict point where they say 24/7, the expectation from me is that I'm not supposed to put my feet up onto things. But now you're asking me to find the thing that we've been doing all this training for. I get really great cookies. It's a whole lot of fun. But now it's up there. And you're saying that I have to put my feet up on this thing in order to get to it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just going to say no. This must be a trick question. So I hope that this is kind of making sense. That allowing the dog to say no and then evaluating why they're saying no can then give us the opportunity to potentially clean up our training, to maybe make things more clear, to maybe change our expectations so that we're not putting the dog in that kind of conflict. And that's really what this first part of saying no is all about, right? It's about these conflict points that the dog may experience. Where again, the dog understood that the rules that we have laid out for them to follow 24/7, for them to be successful in everyday life, that meant one thing. But now we're asking them to do something that goes completely against those rules. So the dog says no. And it's almost as though they're saying, this must be a trick question. You're trying to trick me, so I'm not going to do it. So we want to be really clear about that so that we know that we're not ensuring the dog can become frustrated or completely sour to the activity altogether. So we also want to make certain that we're being careful about our reaction, that we're not getting frustrated, we're not getting angry, we're not like, why are you being so dumb? We don't want to think about it that way towards our dog, right? Remember, we invited the dog into our house. We want to enjoy the time we have with our dog, and they are reacting in a way that makes total sense if we stop to think about it. So this is just one example of how asking or expecting our dog to say no and allowing them to do so and not immediately just shutting it down like you're not allowed to say no, right? Can actually help us be better trainers, handlers, and dog owners. So let me give you another example, try to help this make a little bit more sense. Let's say that in the area where you live, there's a typical kind of rainy season. So I'm just going to use myself as an example. I live in Southern California, and we recently have just had a little bit of a rain spell where it's been raining for days and days and days on end. We just finally had a break. Typically speaking, it's very nice here. It's always sunny and wonderful and fantastic. But when we have these rainy days, that means the dog is going to be going outside to go potty and they're going to get soaking wet. So that means you got to come back in and we're going to dry them off. We're going to dry off their feet, we're going to dry off their body, and then they can go from the rest of the house. Okay, perfect. That's our setup. We're going to say that that's been what you've been experiencing, right? Your dog has been doing great. They completely understand the expectation. I go outside, I do my business, I get all wet, I get all dirty. I come back in, I wait right by the door for you to wipe me down. We're going to say that that's been happening for a bit, right? And now you're just doing the same thing. You let the dog out, they get wet, they get dirty. Maybe they were running around a little bit too. And then they come in and you say, okay, Freddie, come on over here so I'm able to dry you off. But the dog kind of hesitates and then they run off and they hide. And you're like, what are you doing? You are soaking wet, you are covered in mud, you're tracking water and mud all over the house, and now they're underneath a table or a coffee table or underneath the bed or something, and now they're making the carpet all wet and all muddy and gross, and you are less than pleased. We have been doing this for days, and you have been fine. What is going on? Get over here, you little brat, right? Immediately, you're just like, ugh. Little did you know, your dog ran away and they're hiding, like what you see here, because something hurts. So let's say, as an example, that over the course of these days, your dog has been, as they've been going outside, they've also been maybe chasing things, chasing birds or chasing other critters or things. And they happen to maybe slip. Maybe they caught their nail on something. Something else happened outside that maybe they got a little hurt. Maybe they strained their foot or their leg a little bit. Nothing serious, but it's just a little ouchy. But when they came in to get their wipe down, like they have been getting all those days, you had to hold their foot in such a way in order to clean it off, in order to dry it off. But that hurt them, right? It hurt them more because we didn't know that anything happened. So now they've made the assumption, they've made the attachment that that towel thing hurts me. So I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to have you wipe off my feet. I'm going to run away instead. So I hope that you can see that in this example, it's not fair for us to say the dog must do this, right? And to get angry and frustrated with them. They're saying no because they hurt. And it's not that we're hurting them on purpose. We don't know. Our dogs are very stoic. Our dogs are amazingly stoic. And they can sometimes really hold on to injuries for quite a while when we don't even know. So I think it's important for us to keep this in the back of our mind that if your dog has been really doing something for a while, they've been doing it well, they know the behavior, they know the routine, whatever the case may be, and suddenly they say no, however that is, the first thought that should come into your mind is, are they hurting? Is there a medical issue here? Do I need to take my dog to the vet? So just to give you another example to help this make a little bit more sense. You may have heard of agility. Agility is where the dogs are tackling an obstacle course with their handler, where they're going over jumps and they're going through hoops and they're going through tunnels and over A-frames and teeter-totters. It's all kinds of fun stuff. And it requires a lot of training and practice, and the dogs love it. They have to learn how to do all the individual obstacles. They also have to learn how to do handling as far as reading what their handler is doing. It requires a lot of practice and training, but the dogs really enjoy it. If you were doing this with your dog for any period of time, they understood the obstacles, they understood the handling, they understood the job, right? And then you go to do a certain course, a series of obstacles, and suddenly your dog isn't going over the jump, they're going around the jump. They're not going through the tunnel, they're stopping at the tunnel. They're not taking the teeter-totter, they're just refusing it outright. They're not going through the actual tire jump, they're trying to like go under it. They're doing all this weird stuff. Maybe they're just going completely off course. Maybe they're trying to leave the ring that has all these obstacles. 9 times out of 10, when those kinds of things pop up out of nowhere, that's a good indication for you to go see the vet. They may have an injury. And because our dogs are so stoic, we may not even know. So these little moments of the dog is literally saying, no, I'm not going to take this jump. No, I'm not going to do this teeter-totter. No, I'm not going to go through the tire. Those moments of them saying no is really important information for us. That's maybe I physically can't do this because I'm hurt. So I hope that makes sense, that us forcing the dog to continue doing that course or to get angry or frustrated with them or just say, oh, they're being stubborn. Oh, they're being such a brat. That may not be the case. They physically may not be able to do it. So I hope this is starting to make sense that sometimes our dogs saying no is not our dogs being bad dogs. It could be something else going on. So this is another important thing, that pain may be a reason why our dog is saying no. And this is especially true if the dog is doing something that they have a lot of background in. They have a lot of training, they love it, they've been doing it for a while, and out of nowhere, they suddenly stop doing it. And this can be for any type of activity. It could even be for something, let's say that your dog, it really likes doing their tricks. Maybe they like doing sit pretty, or maybe they like doing roll over or paw. And you ask them to do that, and they don't. They look like they're trying, but they don't. They kind of hesitate. That's a good thing for you to have in the back of your mind. Be like, that's odd. We've been doing this and it's been fine, but now they're saying no. Why are they saying no? And again, our dogs are incredibly stoic. They can be hiding some pretty serious medical things wrong with them for quite a bit. So the more that we can be in tune with them to listen to what they're saying when they happen to say no, particularly in these situations where it just comes out of nowhere, it can give us some pretty good information. And it's very different from where, oh, I'm just going to be mad at my dog. Like, well, I would feel pretty gross if I was mad at my dog just because they were hurt. But let me give you another example of where a dog may potentially say no. Let's say that your dog is a little nervous around other people. They have their circle of friends, of maybe people that they know, maybe people in your home, other close friends, maybe your trainer. But for other people, they're kind of like, I'm not so sure about them. They're a little scary, right? But you have a classmate, or maybe you have a neighbor or a friend who loves dogs. Like, I love dogs and all dogs love me. So we're going to help you help your dog like more people. What a wonderful thing for them to offer, right? So nice of them. So here's how this typically goes. Is the person going to be like, great, I'm going to get myself really small. I'm going to crouch down to the dog's level. And then you're, meaning you, are going to give me a whole bunch of their favorite treats. And I'm going to hold my hand out to let them know that I have the wonderful treats. So they're going to come over, they're going to eat the treats, and we're going to be friends. Okay, we're going to say we're going to play this out, right? So here we have our person. They're like, look, I have the delicious treats. And we can see our tiny little dog here is like, I'm a little nervous. You are not one of my favorite people. I don't know about this. But I really, 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 really want those treats, right? Those treats are super delicious. Maybe they're like my favoriteest of treats, says the dog. So the dog starts inching closer, particularly if we have the dog, let's say, on leash, and we're walking the dog towards our classmate, our friend, our neighbor, whomever this person is. So there's additional incentive for the dog to go. They really want the treats, and we're basically saying, go this way. And the person is so excited, right? The dog is coming over. They're coming to get the treats. Maybe they're even eating the treats. And they're like, see, I told you. All dogs love me. Dogs are, they just adore me. I'm going to help your dog be so brave, and they're going to love all people because of this experience. And because they're eating the treats, I'm going to pet them a little bit to let them know just how great they are and how much we are going to be friends. And then this happens. The dog panics after the treats are gone, and maybe they even air snap at the person, and the person is mortified, you're mortified, everyone's mortified. What happened? What happened is, this is what was really going on, is when the dog was away from the person, they were saying, no thank you, you're really scary. But we didn't listen. And instead we put the dog into conflict, where we were enticing them to get closer to the person that they were comfortable doing. So they really, really, really wanted the treats, right? The treats are almost like this siren on the sea. Come here, tiny creature. Right? Come eat these treats. And they get really close. They're in conflict. And now they almost panic because now they don't know what to do. They're close to the person that they were scared of all the way back here, but not they're really close to them. And the person's trying to touch them. And you're there too, telling them this is what you need to do, right? Be a brave dog and come see this person. And that's when we have those big explosions. It's when we have those big reactions. Barking, air snapping, trying to run away. It's a whole thing. So it's understandable why this happens. And if we instead looked at it from the dog's perspective of if they're saying no thank you, this is scary, why don't we listen to this piece and help the dog feel more comfortable here? Because at the end of the day, it's their opinion that matters. We can't force the dog to feel more comfortable. They have to feel more comfortable on their own. So if your dog says no because they are afraid, we absolutely should honor this no. We shouldn't just force them through it. It's not something that you want to force compliance on. You're only going to make the dog more afraid, and they may feel they have to ratchet up their reaction just to feel safe. As an example, in that photo, we're just going to go back for a second, don't get a bit dizzy. This is a tiny itty bitty little dog, right? We don't know what this dog views this person as. This person could be a giant monster as far as they're concerned. So we're asking them to go towards the giant monster that wants to eat them. That's terrible. So instead, what we want to do is we want to work on building the dog's confidence. Can they actually encounter something that is potentially scary? And can they choose how they want to interact with that? And can they incrementally make it so that they're braver and braver to deal with that situation? This is really the power of leveraging choice. Instead of taking all the choice away from the dog, we're allowing the dog to make choices, and then we're rewarding them for making good choices. So try to help this make a little bit more sense. We want to avoid this kind of thing. And this is what we see all the time, right? This dog is not comfortable in any way, shape, or form. And this person is like, oh, they have to smell my hand. This is encroaching upon this dog's space. And we can see we have some piloerection, which means we have some hair up on the neck. The dog is kind of leaning. We have whale eye. We have the mouth closed. This is all icky. We don't want this. So instead, what we want to do is we want to have setups where we're allowing the dog to make choices of what they want to do, particularly when we're talking about people, because it is very traumatic for someone to get bitten. It's pretty scary for even a dog to do a warning, to do an air snap or a growl and an air snap. We don't want that to happen towards other people. It's not good. So we want to try to avoid that as much as we can. So instead, we're going to have this situation where we have our dog with us, right? And we're going to have the person, they're going to be a distance away from the dog. But I hope you can see there's a difference in how this little stock photo person, how they're situated. They're now crouching down. They're still making themselves smaller, which is not a bad idea. But now they're facing away from the dog, and they're also sideways. So we don't want to be frontal. We want to be like, come see me, little dog. Like, that's really scary. We want to be sideways and looking away and not holding eye contact. Smiling and breathing really does help. And they're going to keep their hands at their side. They're not going to have any treats to try to entice the dog in. This is all going to be a choice by the dog. So we're just going to wait and see what the dog does. Maybe they take a couple of steps towards a person because they're curious, they're inquisitive. That's when we can give them some treats. Us, their handler, their person, the person that they're supposed to be trusting and looking into to keep them safe. And they're like, oh, I got treats for taking a couple steps towards the person? That's interesting. And then we would want to create distance. We would want to back up or go back a couple of steps so that there's even more distance away from the scary person. Have a little party with them, celebrate a little bit, and then we'd be like, okay, well, what do you want to do now? And maybe the dog comes right back to where they were, which is closer than when they started, and maybe they want to take a couple more steps. Perfect. A couple more treats, and then we back up again. So I hope you can see how this approach is entirely different. It's dictated by the dog. And it's allowing the dog to make these choices. It's not pushing them into a situation where they can make mistakes. And again, mistakes with dogs with teeth, it can be really bad. We want to avoid that as much as we can. And you're going to just have to coach the person who's helping you. That just, we don't want you looking at the dog. You're just going to be smiling and waiting and breathing. The dog may never come to you in the session. You didn't do anything wrong. You were perfect. Thank you so much for your help. This was amazing because now my dog knows a couple things. One, you're not the big, mean, scary monster that's going to eat them. Two, they can trust me that I will keep them safe and I will listen to them. If they say no, I can't go any further, I'm not going to force them to do so. So I hope that makes sense. And this is an approach that can take some time. If your dog is struggling with stranger danger, where they are concerned about other people, if you aren't already, please make certain that you're working with an instructor or a trainer who's reputable, ideally in person, so they can do an assessment with your dog and come up with a program. But the big thing that is really the cornerstone of all behavior modification programs is that instructor or that trainer is going to be changing the dynamic between yourself and your dog so that your dog knows they can trust in you, that they don't have to be worried about the big wide world. They don't have to try to put it inside of their own little paws. They can actually look to you to keep them safe. So we would want to make certain that we're basically organizing all of that so that's the case. So I hope this makes sense. It's a really common thing as far as a pitfall that people fall into. But this is a situation where allowing the dog to say no and honoring the no and maybe shifting our approach can make a really big positive impact. So with that, I wanted to make certain that if you guys have any questions, please feel free to write those in the comments. I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have. But we are going to be looking at some videos. And these videos are just stock videos that I was able to find. And we're just going to be looking through, is the dog saying no? And if they are saying no, why may they be saying no? So I'm going to take a look at those. So here's our first video. Just going to let you guys take a look at this. So there's no audio for these. So what do you think? In that situation, was the dog saying no at all? And you're like, I don't even know what I was looking at. It just looked like a big fluffy dog doing stuff. So we're going to be able to look at the video again. We're going to look at it in a little bit more slow motion. But what I'm hoping that these video examples will do for you is that they'll highlight how the dog saying no may be very slight, but that we want to try to see if we can hear those no's and then how we may be able to address those going forward. So now we're going to watch this in slow motion. So here we can see that our little person comes in with the claw and see how the eyes are closed. The dog kind of shies away. They like, no, don't touch me. This hand position is what we call the claw in the dog training world. And this is the most common response that you see, where the dog's like, no, don't touch my head, right? That is the dog saying no. And if we were doing training with our dog, what it looks like this gentleman is doing, and we're trying to do training or playing or somehow other interacting with our dog, we would want to minimize these kinds of reactions as much as we could. So this is where recognizing when our dog is saying, I don't like that, don't do that. Well, then we can try to figure out how we can avoid that, right? So potentially avoiding the claw altogether, not going over the top of the dog's head, but maybe having our hand over to the side. And there are some dogs that just don't like to be pet when they're doing other things. If they're doing playing or they're doing training, like, don't touch me. I don't want you to touch me. Use my toys, use my treats, but don't touch me. And it's all about the dog's opinion. Because if we're trying to use petting as a reward, or if we're trying to use petting as a way to interact with our dogs and they don't like it, and we're trying to pair it up with their training, we're not going to be getting the kind of results that we think. We're actually going to be frustrating the dog. It would be the metaphor I like to use is, let's say that you were having Thanksgiving dinner, right? Or some other type of really big, wonderful get together with family and friends where it's a whole lot of really delicious food. You've been looking forward to this forever. You're about to sit down and eat all this wonderful food, and someone comes over and they put their fist into your plate of food as they're patting the top of your head, right? And you're like, what are you doing? I was looking forward to this. Leave me alone. Like, this is disgusting, right? But they're like, no, it's just all good. It's nice. This is a fun time. We're just having fun. We're just, little jokesters or whatever. Like, this is not funny. This is not funny. This is not enjoyable. I don't like this. So that's something to keep in mind when you're interacting with your dog, is that, again, their opinion matters. So when the dog is saying no like this, we would want to think through, well, how may I be able to change what I'm doing so the dog isn't saying no? So again, we can see how the dog backs away. He's like, no, stop that. They even put their paw like, stop that. Don't touch me. And he tries again. He's like, no, leave me alone. I don't want it. I don't want it. Stop it. He even like jumps away. He's like, no, I don't want that. Give me the cookie. So then he actually reciprocates, like, okay, that's fine. Here, we're going to do a little bit of a sit, and then we're going to do a little bit of a catch. And the dog is like, I like catch. Catch is great. Look at that big chunk of food. Yum, yum, yum. Delicious. Yay. Right? So this is a really nice interaction between these two as far as a relationship. And you can see how the dog's like, okay, great. I don't mind that. Just don't touch me again. So this is where it's important for us to keep in mind that petting really does make a difference. So there are some things you may want to consider as far as when you are doing things with your dog and the types of petting that you're doing. It's a good idea to follow what's called the 3-second rule. Like, what on earth is that? This is where, again, we're allowing our dog to have choice. So basically, you'd be petting your dog and you would be counting to yourself 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, and then you're going to stop petting. If the dog stays there, maybe they even lean into you, they kind of be like, why did you stop? Continue petting for another 3 seconds. And every single 3 seconds, just pause for a second and see what your dog does. You will be so surprised that there's a lot of times that your dog goes, oh, thank goodness that you stopped, and they move off. It wasn't that they weren't enjoying the petting, but they've had their fill. And they don't want to stay there anymore. So it's important for us, again, to allow the dog to have choice. And also following the 3-second rule can also give you an idea of the type of petting that your dog may enjoy more than others. Lots of dogs will enjoy where you're petting with the grain of their fur, how it grows, as opposed to like doing one of these. They're like, I'm not a big fan of that. But doing more like this, they're like, that's nice. They might like it on the side of their necks or maybe on their bum, but they're not all that keen if you're trying to do stuff on their sides of their bellies, as an example. It really does depend on the dog. But you really do want to avoid the claw, if at all possible. Most dogs are not a fan of the claw, and they will back away from it. And what you're looking for whenever you're trying to do any kind of tactile, any kind of touch, or other types of touch-related interaction with your dog, what you're looking for are these no moments. Like, no, I don't like that, which is where they go backwards or they go sideways. And that's them trying to avoid your touch. If they're doing that, then just listen to it. Be like, okay, no problem. What kind of touch do you want? And then build it up in your training with your different types of repetitions, pairing it up with treats or toys or other types of verbal praise so they actually like it. But I think it's important for us to keep in mind that it's the dog's opinion that matters. And if we're always taking away their choice and we're not listening to the no's, things can get out of hand pretty quickly. We're going to take a look at another video example so we can try to see what is happening here. So this is in slow motion already. This, again, is just a stock video I was able to find. So we have a handler who is like, I would like you to go down. And then we see where the dog is looking. And here's my foot. Now, what I do like about that is how the handler was smiling at the end, right? So again, all of these are just stock photos I was able to find on a program where, if I have to guess, looking, a lot of these are in compilations. These are just bits and pieces of them. Is that these were videos specifically taken to be shared. So these are basically shoots, as it were. So they may have been doing this for a bit, trying to get these different pieces of footage. And we have to remember that our dogs don't sign up for those kinds of things. They just kind of show up and like, who are all these people with the cameras, right? So in this situation, the dog is absolutely saying no. But if you're actually watching the video back, which we'll do, is that the dog is actually focusing on the hand that's held up. They're looking at this hand because it's got a treat in it. And she's trying to give a cue with her other hand, and she's staring at the dog, and they're getting to a little bit of eye contact. So then the dog looks at this and is like, well, what about my foot? And she's like, no, do this. This is where the dog is saying no because of confusion. And it could be because we're throwing so many different cues at the dog, right? One of her hands is up, the other hand is pointed down. She's looking at the dog is focusing on one hand and not paying attention to the other. The other thing to keep in mind is, again, this is absolutely being done with probably some kind of professional camera or something else. And being in a down position is a very vulnerable position. Dogs may not be comfortable being in a down with a bunch of strangers around, not to mention strangers who have cameras, because cameras can be very scary to dogs. Basically, the way to think about a camera, whether it's your smartphone or an actual camera, is that it's a big, giant, unblinking eyeball that's very confrontational to dogs. So it can be really unsettling to them. So you have a stranger who's holding a big, unblinking eyeball in this weird setup, and here we are doing all these different things. And the dog's like, I'm not going into a down here. That's scary, right? I also don't know what you want from me because one hand is saying one thing, your mouth is saying another thing, your face is saying something else, and your other hand is saying something else. So when our dogs say no in these kinds of situations, we want to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Are we potentially being unclear, right? It's really easy for us to be like, no, my dog knows what to do. It's amazing that our dogs know to do anything. Again, they're not furry people. And we sometimes aren't even clear about what we want them to do. So we really want to evaluate what was the information I was giving to the dog to begin with. Could it also be the dog is experimenting, where maybe this is something that we've been working on in our training, but now they're trying to see, well, did you want something a little bit more? Did you want something a little bit different? And that's a normal part of learning. We shouldn't get frustrated with that. We should work within it. Or could it also be that they're uncomfortable, right? So I think in this situation for this video, it was a combination of the two. I think the dog was a little confused, and I think they were also uncomfortable going into that position because likely of the people with the big cameras. So we're going to take a look at some more videos. You guys are doing great. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put those in those comments. So we have another stock video that's already in slow motion. So as you're watching this, I want you to think to yourself, is the dog saying no at all as they're actually going through this activity? This little fluff ball weaving through these tires. And we can also tell this is an older puppy. Give me the cookie. I want the cookie. And there's a cookie piece. Yum, yum, yum. We have claw. It's just so natural to do. We have pushing down with the hand on the dog's bottom. Claw and petting, claw and petting. It's like, ugh, more cookie. Here's my foot. Give me cookie. Good job, little one. So what about that one? What do we think? Was the dog saying no at all? I would say they were. So we're going to look at this again. Again, it's all in slow motion. So we'll be able to break this down bit by bit. And again, the no moments may be very fleeting. So we can see right here, if we watch the left arm, if the arm farthest away from the dog, they're actually guiding the dog into the tire. So right now we have this handler, trainer person is really saying, I want you to go into the tire, right? Because again, this is being filmed and they are using the treat as a lure. Lures are not bad. And even potentially showing the dog where to go is not necessarily bad. But it's important for us to keep in mind, particularly with this type of stance, just how much pressure that we're placing, that we're saying, you're going to go through this tire, right? And you're just going to do it. We want to really try to think, is there a way we may be able to do the same type of approach where we want the dog to go through the tire, but the dog chooses to do so? So that it's their idea. The more we can make training the dog's idea, the less issues we're going to have. So right here, we already have a lot of guiding around with the dog. Dog comes up, it's like, okay, I want the treat. Ugh, where'd the treat go? Okay, I'm gonna go in this way. They're adorable, very cute. And then we're doing some more luring to get into the other tire. Some hand motion as well. Dog's like, okay, I'm ready for my treat. And this is where we get the no. See how the dog turns away? It's like, ugh, look, I did 3 tires. I would like my cookie, please. So they turn away. This is the dog saying no, because they're like, this isn't worth it for me. I did 3 tires and you didn't give me a cookie. What is going on? But then they decide to get re-engaged. I'm like, oh, I guess I really do want cookie. Give me cookie. And it's more alluring. It's like, ugh, give me the cookie. It's like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. Ugh. So now we have some licking. We're like, okay, I'm anticipating I should be getting my cookie now. But see how they kind of arc? They arc away from the person. And here the dog is saying no for the sit. The dog really doesn't like the petting too much either. But the person is really pushing quite a bit on their bottom because they want them to sit. And the dog is like, no, I don't want to sit. Now, this is an older dog, so it's possible maybe sit's not overly comfortable. Maybe they just don't want to sit in that instance. And even there, the dog is like, ugh, stop petting me. But here's my foot. Give me the cookie. Just give me the cookie. So I hope that you can see that there's conflict here. There is a giant amounts of conflict. No. But we can also say that we're probably losing what's called criteria as we're going along, where they may have been working on going through those tires, right? And maybe the dog was offering going through the tires, maybe even liked going through the tires. But we may have gone too quickly, where now maybe the dog was offering going through one tire and then they used to get a cookie. Great. And then maybe they offer going through 2 tires and then they got a cookie. But now we want them to do 3 tires before they get a cookie. Or now we want them to do 6 tires before they get a cookie. The dog was like, this isn't worth it. So we really want to evaluate what's the dog's performance with what they're doing. Are we seeing a dip? Are we maybe pushing them too far? Are we rewarding the dog? When are we rewarding the dog? And how are we rewarding the dog? Are we making it so it's in their interest to do this? Or are we making it so they're like, I'd take it or leave it kind of thing. When we're doing training, we want the dog to be like, this was the best idea for me to ever have. And we really want to try to frame it so it looks like it's their idea to begin with. Then they're going to want to do that more. So this is a good example of the dog is saying no. It's not really being listened to, but we're noticing a dip in the performance because of that. So great job, guys. We have a couple more video examples. You're doing wonderful. So here's another video for you. So what do you think this dog is saying? Is this dog saying no? What do you think there? So we're going to look at that slow-mo because I know it was really, really fast. So here we can see that the person has a dog up in this sit pretty kind of stance. This can have a lot of pressure and torque on the dog's hips, on their back. It can be an uncomfortable position after a while. It also requires pretty strong abs and core muscles. So the dog is okay to do it for a little bit, but then they're like, I don't know I can do this anymore. So they actually say no in a pretty clear way. They're also paying attention to the camera person. They're like, oh, I don't like that you're coming over here either. So see how they try to pull away? Like, no, I don't like that. Stop that. No, don't touch me. No. Just, ugh. But look, I'll sit and I'll look really cute. Here are my ears. So it's important for us to keep in mind how something can be physically difficult for the dog. And we may simply be asking too much, right? The dog held that position for quite a bit. But again, these are stock videos. So they wanted to get the really cute, super awesome video for posting onto wherever. And the dog's like, I can't stay in this position anymore. So they say no, right? They pull away, but then they immediately go right back into a sit. So this isn't a dog being a bad dog. It could very well just have been too much for them physically. It could be it was making them sore. It could be that they have an injury. It could also be the action is hurting them. So this is something that I've seen myself where I was still teaching in person. I was teaching group classes. And for our basic manners classes, we would start incorporating tricks. And one of the tricks that we would teach is roll over. And without fail, in almost every single class, I would have one dog where rollover was very, very, very painful. It was just not something that was on the cards for them. Maybe they were older, maybe they were a little overweight, maybe they had arthritis. And trying to ask those dogs to really roll over on their bodies from one side to the other when they're laying down, it was physically impossible for them. And they would really struggle. And the clients would be so disheartened. They're like, I want them to do rollover. It's like, yeah, but they physically can't. We're going to teach them different tricks. Other tricks that they can do, and they're not going to be sore. But again, this is why it's so important to allow the dog to say no. Because we could ignore why the dog is saying no and try to force them to do rollover. But how sad would that be? That we're trying to do a fun little trick, but the dog is in pain the whole time. Like, that wouldn't be fair. So that's why, again, allowing our dogs to say no and thinking through why they're saying no is so important. So we're going to take a look at another video example. So again, it's just a stock video. So I'm trying to get my shot. Oh, stop eating the thing. Here, I want you to do this. Do this. Here's my foot. I'm going to bite this. I'm going to bite this. Bye. So what do you think? Is that dog saying no? Pretty much guaranteed they're saying no. They actually left. So it's the same type of situation that we've been talking about so far. If I had to guess before we take a look at this video, is that, again, these are all stock videos. And that was clearly they were trying to get certain poses and certain actions with the dog. And the dog was just like, no, I'm not doing that here. And it could be that they were uncomfortable with the camera. It could have been that the person was really, could have been the person was stressed, that the person was nervous. All of that matters, right? And it's not that the dog is just being, oh, they're just being so annoying. Oh, they're just being so stubborn. Oh, they're being so insolent. It could very well be the dog recognizes that you're nervous and then they're nervous too, or maybe we're just being unclear. So recognizing why the dog is saying no and then trying to come up with a plan to help them so that they're not saying no is really the key piece. So we're going to take a quick look at this video. So we have a happy little corgi. Got another stock video. So see that sideways motion? Backing away? Like, give me the cookie. It's like, I would like you to do something. It's like, no, give me cookie. Here's my foot. No, don't touch me. Don't stop it. Don't stop touching me. Don't leave me alone. See that backward motion? That is the dog saying no, right? In no uncertain terms. It's so clear once you see it that that's what no looks like. So we're going to take a look at this little white dog. And what I want you to see here, we're going to back this up a little bit, is I want you to pay attention to this little white dog's nose. We went back too far. So watch their nose. See how it's going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth? They're taking in a bunch of information inside of their environment. They're sniffing a whole lot. And here, they're starting to investigate things that they see off in the distance. They're focused on that. They're like, ooh, look at those things. And then they just kind of turn around and go away. Is this dog saying no? I think it depends on what the situation is. At the very least, the dog is investigating things, right? They're doing a lot of sniffing in the beginning, so they're taking in information from the environment. So if I was asking that dog to do something, I wanted them to sit, I wanted them to come, I wanted them to maybe do some other activity. Maybe we were getting ready to do agility or tricks or scent work or whatever. And the dog was sitting there with their nose going back and forth and they weren't focused on me at all. That's kind of a version of the dog saying no. I'm taking in information from the environment. Particularly in the latter part of that video where the dog is focused on the people that you can barely see, they're really fuzzy, at the back part of the space. That's them saying, oh, what's that over there? If we were then to ask that dog to do something, they're probably going to be saying no because they're trying to figure out what's going on over there. So again, these no's that I'm talking about can be so slight, but they can give us a lot of information and they can also avoid conflict points. Because if my dog is trying to take in information from the environment and I'm busy being like, come do this with me. And they're like, no, I need to see, are those things over there going to kill me? Then it would be just be better for me to just wait for the dog to feel more comfortable or to provide support for the dog so they do feel comfortable, and then we'd be able to do whatever we're looking to do. So one final video for you and then we'll start wrapping up. You guys have been amazing. So here we have a tiny little terrier doing all kinds of things. So what do you think? Is this dog saying no? What do you think? I don't think so. There's not much of a no inside this video at all. See how eager this dog is? It doesn't even care about the person walking by. It's really engaged. It's like, oh my goodness, this is just so much awesomeness. Please give me whatever it is that you have. I will do all of my tricks. I want the cookie. So I wanted to end on this because it's not as though every time that we're doing something with our dogs, they're saying no. That's not true. But I do think it's really important for us to look for those moments, to try to understand why they may be saying no, and then to come up with a plan so that we can help them so they don't have to say no. So, to try to wrap up, what this really all boils down to is the power of choice. We want our dogs to be more engaged, just at that little terrier at the very end. We want them to love what we're asking them to do. We want them to be like, I can't wait to do whatever it is. Whether it's we're going to go cuddle on the couch together, we're going to go for a walk in the neighborhood together, we're going to do tricks, we're going to do agility or scent work or whatever, right? We want them to be that happy and that engaged to do so. We want them to be participatory, but being participatory means they have to be heard. There's no better way to have a dog choose basically to just tap out than to always be ignored. So if we want them to be engaged, we need to be engaged with them. And that means we have to listen to them. And then we have to try to organize things so they don't have to say no. We want the dog to communicate with us, and we want to try to listen as best as we can. Our dogs are constantly talking to us all of the time. And they try really hard to even talk human. Sometimes they'll mimic us in ways that probably don't make a whole lot of sense to them, but they will mimic things that we do. They'll even mimic noises we make, motions we make. They're trying so hard day in and day out to figure out how to make the two-legged thing happy so that they can be successful day to day. Our job is to try to meet our dogs a little bit more halfway. And that means that if we think about this whole concept of choice, of that the dog is communicating, that there may be times that they're saying no, and that we're trying to figure out why they're saying no, and we're not just immediately thinking bad dog, it can actually help us become more perceptive. It can improve our relationship. It can make you a better dog trainer and, quite frankly, a more talented dog owner because you're able to navigate day to day with your dog a little bit more. And at the end of the day, this type of thing, as far as giving choice, listening to our dogs, recognizing that they are opinionated, living little beings, that it can help avoid a lot of pitfalls. Again, we provide a lot of examples today as far as how it's really easy to get ourselves into sticky situations just because we weren't listening to what the dog was saying. But there are ways to kind of avoid those. So if we give the dog the power of choice, the ability to say no, and that we'll honor that, and then we'll make adjustments so they don't have to say no, then we should be pretty good. So with that, I want to thank you guys so very much for joining us for our very first live stream. I threw so much at you. So I definitely want to thank you all very much for joining us. Again, we're going to be scheduling these at least once a month, hopefully more. We're also going to be getting a lot more active on our YouTube channel. So we're going to be posting videos fairly regularly up there. We're also going to be growing our Facebook group community, Friends of Pet Dog U. So if you haven't already joined, please do so. We also have an absolute enormous amount of webinars scheduled. So we definitely encourage you guys to check that out. I'm just going to put the link inside the comments where you may be able to find those. And also I'm putting in a link for a live webinar that we're actually hosting tomorrow. This webinar is being hosted and presented by another instructor of ours, Anita Ambini. And what she's going to be talking about is what the things you would want to think about if you were going to bring a second puppy into your home. So maybe you already have an adult dog and you're like, oh, I'm going to add a puppy. There are some things you want to think about. So that's a nice smooth transition for yourself and your current dog and also your brand new puppy. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that webinar out. Anita is an excellent presenter. So we really are looking forward to that. I want to thank you guys so very much for joining us today. We look forward to hosting more live streams. Please give your puppies a cookie for me because I took a lot of time away from them, from you, for this live stream. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much and happy training.